I'm Candace Newman. I'm the CEO and founder of Live Out Live and Live Out Live Foundation. And I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Stevo the Producer. Are you here with us today, Stevo?
I am here with us today. Thank you for the introduction.
Of course. Glad to have you here with us. Well, I have a couple of questions that I would love to ask you and just want to, number one, introduce everyone to you and share a little bit about who you are. Stevo is a producer and a director of Steven's company, and I'm going to give him a quick moment to dive a little bit more into his background and his journey. But do me a favor and show him some love and welcome him to the room today. Awesome. All right, Stevo. Okay, good to have you. Can you share a bit about your journey into music production and musical direction? What key experiences and relationships and decisions helped you shape your path? And also, please just give us more of an introduction because I know I briefly introduced you, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I'm just very honored to be able to be here with you guys today. My greatest joy is being able to pay things forward. In a nutshell, I am a producer and a musical director. For anyone who doesn't know what a musical director is, in tradition, that person is generally a band leader. So, in a traditional sense, in the 70s, it would be one appointed musician out of a band who is ultimately taking direction and requests directly from the artist and communicating to the rest of his band members. Since then, we've incorporated and integrated a lot of different um, techniques into the band experience. Backing tracks is a big component, and even synchronizing our musical band shows with lighting and video and audio and pyro and fireworks and all of the above. So the band accompaniment framework has changed drastically throughout the years. So currently, being a musical director in some particular camps, it looks a lot different than it used to. So traditionally, again, it would be more so, hey guys, the artist wants to cut the bridge, or the artist wants to double the last chorus so she can have more time to get into, the fun part of the song, or she wants us to keep playing after she finishes singing so that she can walk to the other side of the stage or do a wardrobe change. You can imagine a lot of the different, reasons for a liaison between your band. But again, in modern day production, I tend to do a lot of work where bands are not present whatsoever. So, what do you do in those instances? Right there, it's a lot of communication needs, but it's not necessarily traditional band communication. So again, in the studio side, I'm here right now working on some albums, and I think we all know what production looks like from a beat maker standpoint. But when it comes to the modern day show, right, Coachella or Beyonce's, Renaissance tour, or Chris Brown and Usher's R&B tour that they're about to do in stadiums, when there's not a band present, right? What's the responsibility of a musical director? And the truth is that it's pretty parallel to the responsibility of the producer in the studio who's making the beats, right? But when there's no band, my responsibility is to manipulate the beats of the original producer. So, all that said, I've had the unique privilege of developing simultaneously inside of touring, performances for broadcast television. I also am heavily involved in the academic space. I serve as a chairman of a music industry program at a Division I institution, which is indicative of how spread thin my schedule is at this point in my career, but it's all positive. That duality and fluency forced me to become more than just a musician. I had to become an operator. And early exposure to high pressure live environments taught me that longevity in this industry belongs to people who can translate vision into systems and not just talent. And so, all that said, if you zoom out, again, I am trusted by some of the biggest and most influential artists in the world and in history, so to speak, to execute and to operate their live production components And because of that skill set, I've launched a company that is a staffing agency, right? And we place students, interns, and professionals across maybe 15 to 20 tours per year with about, I'll say, 15 clients at a time. And so in rotation, we might have 5 engineers out with Rihanna and 8 musicians on the road with Chris Brown and one, production manager on the road with Money Long. And then I might have to go to Saturday Night Live because that requires my personal presence. So again, myself as the operator and the communicator and live show producer. And then I have the company where we staff other people when I'm not able to do more than one job. And also academically, I head up the program at California Baptist University. And that is Stevo in 6 minutes.
Show him some love, guys. What an amazing resume and robust background. Wow, that's incredible. And we appreciate you for making some time to be here with us to share your wealth of knowledge and your background with the young people here in this room. Obviously, you know that these are all students of production. So excited to hear from you, who's an expert in that space. One quick housekeeping. I want to make sure that you guys are asking questions as we go along because this is you guys' opportunity to be mentored by Stevo the producer within this time and learn as much as you can from him. So feel free to drop some questions in the chat and we'll continue. So really quickly, you mentioned a couple of names that you work with, but can you drop several other names that of artists that you work with? Because I know the students here are interested in knowing that, including some of the most recent, which I'm much familiar with, but I want to hear from you.
Absolutely. So, the most recent and notable is Kanye. We just did
Mhm,
both
mhm,
of his SoFi shows in
mhm,
what month is this? It's May. May that was April. So we had two sold out shows, 80,000 people in attendance,
mhm.
160,000 people total. And so that was a very, very notable experience. Prior to that, I did the Super Bowl with Coco Jones. She did the Black National Anthem at our most recent Super Bowl, so you guys can go back and check that out. It was a tribute to Whitney Houston, and I was musical director for both of those clients. Last year, we had a massive year. We worked with everybody from Rihanna to Sabrina Carpenter to Camila Cabello, Keisha Cole, 50 Cent. Lizzo. It's kind of hard to recall all the names, but if you look at that website that I just dropped in our chat, you can see exactly who's on our roster currently. And again, I know you guys might be asking yourselves, how do you not just earn all of this client trust and how do you get these calls to begin with, but how do you handle these massive clients at the same time when all of these artists could be on the road simultaneously? And again, that's because I'm constantly building teams. I'm constantly interviewing. I'm constantly locking arms with other people who are the Stevos of their discipline. And again, if anybody is committed and willing to believe in the mission that we're building here at Sevens, it allows us to again just reach and expand our reach a lot further to handle all of these clients simultaneously.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Your reputation is preceding you, obviously, because you are working with the biggest and the baddest. So, very happy about that for you. You mentioned something earlier that I want to dive a little bit more into live music. Obviously, there's a lot of young students here who are interested in performing their music, putting their music out, producing their music. But I wanted to ask you, when preparing for major live performances, what are some of the first technical decisions you have to make when working with some of these big major artists?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it comes to my first steps of preparation, I would say that it's probably developing an intimate relationship with the music catalog. So take Kanye, for instance. That was a pretty massive lift, mainly because he's been in demand for the last 20, 25 years. So if I were to acquire an Olivia Dean, right, it's a pretty light lift in the sense that she only has one album out, right? And that's not a lot of material to digest. With Kanye, we're probably on album number 12, 13, or 14 or 15 over the span of 25 years. So that's different producers, that's different mixing engineers, that's different eras, that's different sonic palettes. And I have to communicate a show experience that's consistent because as the listener, if song one is underwhelming and song two is overwhelming, that ruins, that impedes on your listening experience. And that can mean sonically, musically, all of the above. And so how do you communicate a show package, right? How do you communicate backing tracks or a musical experience that creates consistency from College Dropout all the way up to 808s and Heartbreaks and whatever else he was doing in his career at the time. So there's this constant tweak and balance, and to your point, an initial understanding of exactly what this artist's, you know, seasonal sonic palette was over the course of the year. So once I understand, okay, he was in this kind of space for this season, and now we want to merge that with this space, then I get into the musical weeds and I figure out how to transition certain songs and tie them together. And I might take the outro of this song and deconstruct it and grab some stems and kind of blend that with the intro of the next song so that you feel a seamless transition from two songs that are on completely separate albums. So I'm almost creating a compilation album experience or a greatest hits experience, right, with live musicianship. So that's probably not as technical as I can get, but I think that kind of speaks to some of the intent with communicating the show production.
It does. And I work in live music, so I'm geeked on all of this stuff, but maybe a little bit more advanced and technical for a lot of the students who are just adapting to studio work
Yeah.
and studio production. So I want to ask you, what are some best practices for them to adapt from studio to the stage, right? Because eventually they want to evolve into that level of performance. But right now, a lot of them are getting adjusted into production in the studio. But how does that process flow into from studio to stage for you?
Yeah, you have to go to concerts regularly and you have to turn on your critical ears. I think when I was trying to understand more and develop my like performance IQ, I subscribed to Ticketmaster and whatever else, apps kind of let you know what concerts are in your area. And I would just set a bit of money aside and make sure that I'm at least three concerts per week, just so I can take all the information in lighting plots and staging dimensions and different creative renders and acoustic sets versus heavy production versus heavy dance and choreography versus heavy lighting versus band versus no band, right? And I just took all that information in at once. And again, I think that's the best way to not transition, but to add live production IQ into your studio bag because for me, I think the primary difference between studio and stage is that in stage we want a dynamic experience, and in the studio you kind of want it to be pretty consistent and digestible, right? I think for from an analogy standpoint, if you're preparing a meal for somebody in like in studio context, you want complementary food groups and you want it to be pretty evenly spread. Okay, I can digest all of this. This feels like a consensus of a conversation sonically. But when you experience something on the stage, again, if you're at a festival, you're competing with another stage that's 50 yards away, and you have to intently, you want people to pull their attention away from the stage they're at and say, "Hey, I think I'm going to go over here because that seems to be where the energy is." So how do you demand, right, that kind of attention when you're fighting for attention in a large space like that? So there's a sonic, consideration. There's also a showmanship consideration, and there's also a lot of technical things. But again, I think the first thing that will help you is to spend time in that space. And the stage becomes your new studio. And before you get an opportunity to work on stage and to be a part of maybe, some low-hanging fruit jobs like stagehands or running wire and cable, you don't have to wait until you get those opportunities. My point is you can be a patron and a ticket holder, but take any experience from the standpoint of trying to understand what's happening.
That's amazing. Thank you for answering that question. And I will say, because there's a bunch of young people in the room who probably don't have the resources to buy tickets to concerts, go to your local venue, volunteer your time so that you can be close and get closer to the concert space in general. So, yes. We do have a question in here from Jolie. Jolie, you want to come on and ask Stevo the producer your question?
Yeah. I was wondering and curious about how you take care of yourself as someone who's really busy um, on the road. Like, what are some of your non negotiables or self care things or ways you stay connected to who you are?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Wonderful question.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The truth is, I personally don't go on the road at all. And the reason why is because it's a lifestyle choice, but the reason why I'm able to make that decision is because one, I put my time in and I've done years on the road and I've built a staff that's able to go on the road for me, right? And I'm the phone home resource. I'm the HQ. I'm the quality assurance person, the firefighter. So very rarely do I actually jump on a plane, and if I do, it's either because something's going really wrong or really right. No in between. So, for example, with the Super Bowl we just did in February, I went on that, trip because it's a massive, once in a lifetime opportunity, and I wanted to make sure it was flawless. But that artist right after that show had 5 or 6 festival dates that I was not involved in as far as being on the ground personnel. But I do have calls weekly with my clients, and I ask them how was the show, what can we improve on, do we need to make any changes with personnel? So that's kind of more my seat. So I don't have that particular consideration anymore as far as finding my balance on the road. Now I do have chaos at home again, and just managing several clients that can be chaotic. But when I was on the road, I think that my piece was probably checking in with my loved ones and talking to people who weren't in my industry at all. That's kind of like my solitude is having conversations that have nothing to do with work, and they just remind me about being human and being present. I'm a humongous and an obsessive family person. And so just speaking to my 92-year-old grandmother gives me a recharge and talking to my childhood friends. And again, it's a challenge because with experience and success, you do have to sometimes be considerate about, what other people may or may not be experiencing in their lives. So I try to have conversations that not only give me what I need, to charge up, but also conversations um, um, that don't necessarily remind people of what they aren't able to accomplish. And that's a serious conversation that you have to consider once you cross the threshold of I don't say astronomical, but unique success, right? Because you have people who may not necessarily be in those places in their careers. And so being sensitive to those things as you get what you need is something to think about. So a little bit off topic, but I think it's necessary.
Definitely not off topic. Thank you for your question, Jolie. It's all a balance, right? One thing breeds the other, right? The heart posture of who you are pours into or inspires the business part of who you are and motivates it and keeps it going, and it's kind of fluid. So it's a good question because there's always a balance in all of the things that we're doing and a reason for it. So thank you for answering that question. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, let's hear from Tanya. Hey, Tanya.
Hey Stevo, hey Candace, how are y'all doing? I'm the marketing director with Live Out Live, and I really like to ask questions to kind of like really align with our mission, but I just got really curious with this one. In a time, because I'm a DJ and like every time I'm just in a live setting, I've always noticed like how easy things get to be able to go wrong. Like it's just there's something that always goes wrong. So, how do you build trust with clients in a setting where like anything could go wrong at any time?
I think you build trust by having unlimited solutions. I think that that's the trust capital when you're known for um always finding a way for something to be successful and you've done it repeatedly. Trust comes with time and it comes with making certain that you are the level-headed person again with a solutions-oriented mindset. Even if things don't go quite as planned with your solutions, being able to be the one that has again that poise and the ability to think through problems and chaos is what builds trust. I mean, in this capacity, right? We're talking about very high stakes, very high visibility, and very high pressure environments. And so,
In real time, a lot of times.
yeah, when give analogies to people in my personal life, I compare myself to first responder based disciplines, right? On-call surgeons, right? On-call lawyers and attorneys, on-call firefighters, emergency, response teams. That's kind of like the nature of our business. And it's not that we're saving lives all the time. I think music does cure, but it's ultimately because of the visibility. Like we are always constantly being viewed and scrutinized and criticized in front of tens of thousands of people at a time. And so, with that being said, if that doesn't shake you, if that doesn't make you nervous, if that doesn't make you panic, there's trust in that to begin with, just your poise alone. And poise, don't misunderstand me, poise is not to be confused with nonchalant nature, right? Like just because I am at a state of rest and a state of confidence doesn't mean I don't know what we're up against. I think it's just having the experience of being in those spaces constantly and knowing how it can play out is what gives me the poison the confidence and communicating that to my client, talking them off the ledge, right? Because been times where I've had artists right before a show and they say, you know what, I'm not coming out. I'm not going to perform. It's just too much. Nothing's going right. I'm just so super nervous. But if you have the language again and the acumen and the demeanor that makes them say, okay, if Steve-O is confident, if he's saying that we're going to be fine, then I trust that. But that comes with time and experience.
Situational awareness is one of the words that kept coming to my head when you were talking about all of those different roles, right? Just being aware and obviously getting in front of it as much as you possibly can, but mitigating any issues and ahead of time.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you so much, Tanya. We have a couple more questions from Aaliyah. Let's hear from you.
Awesome. I love what you said at the beginning when you mentioned that longevity belongs to those who are able to turn a vision into a system. It sounds like from what you've shared so far, one of those systems is building a team you trust, being able to outsource that so that you can be home, you can have your family time. But what are some of the other systems that you have built over the years that you'd recommend to us?
Yeah, so I missed a very important part of the story. So I am from Washington, D.C. originally, which we all know has zero, I won't say zero, but a very limited musical and mainstream entertainment presence. That said, every region, especially cities that are very economically successful, they have an industry that they're known for, right? If you go to New York, it's probably Wall Street. If you go to Los Angeles, it's probably entertainment. And if you go to Washington, D.C., it is the federal government, right? So all that said, my experience from the age of, I say 22 to about 29 was in the federal government working for the Department of Defense, White House, Pentagon, Department of the Navy. And the reason I was able to move through these venues is because it is again it's the primary industry of that region. And I know it sounds like hard to conceptualize on the outside, but again, it's like being born and raised in LA and finding an internship at Capitol Records. Like it's not easy, but it's not out of the question. So all that said, being in those spaces at that time in my life, one, it gave me the ability to work through high pressure environments because it actually was life or death, as opposed to music where it's high pressure, but it's not necessarily the same stakes as working in another industry that's that critical. With that said, it also introduced me to systems because I was working in the tech space in information technology. So I was understanding databases and servers and infrastructure and network topologies and just this whole other side of my brain. And so, to your point, uh, that is probably what I carry with me. That's kind of my secret weapon because I'm in a pool of creatives, and I'm the only one, not the only one, but I'm one of the only ones that has a life jacket of systems, right, that keeps me afloat. And so the reason why I'm able to build a company and replicate and create systems, not only in staffing, but in our infrastructure, right, in the way that we organize our meetings and our back office, right, and our onboarding process and our orientation, expectations and how we organize sessions and files in Google Drives and Dropbox, synchronization links across different computers, like all of that information comes from my dual background in corporate and creativity. So there are a ton of systems, almost too many to name that we use that gives my company a competitive edge. But maybe there's another lesson baked into that, and maybe that's making sure that if you have an opportunity to dip your toe into another industry, it might not necessarily be a detour, right? It might be another feather in your cap to be competitive in the industry that you ultimately want to be in.
That's awesome. I'm actually of a similar background, having worked in tech for 10 years and I just quit and I'm doing the creative thing now. So a follow-up question on that, if we don't mind, is um, I love how you framed that as a superpower. And then if you're open to sharing how you transitioned to something more creative, as well as any things that you could recommend expediting when it comes to, like, if you were to do it over, maybe there's certain things on that creative side of the house where, it's like, oh, these are the things that I would recommend learning first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't have to transition because I had such a strong foundation of creativity to begin with. My parents come from creative backgrounds, so I've been playing instruments since I was single digits. And by the time I jumped into tech, I was already one of the best musicians in the world. And tech for me was a short pivot, and I wasn't intending on a temporary pivot. I was intending on making a career out of that space, so I gave it my all because I didn't see how I was going to find my way back into creativity. But to answer your question, it wasn't necessarily, I guess it was a transition, but um, it wasn't without a firm foundation in creativity. And so when it comes to doing something differently, what I probably would have done is maybe key in a little bit more on the theoretical knowledge side, like the academic side of music, a lot sooner. I come from a performative, um, gospel, very demonstrative side of music. And then I did the academic stuff a little later. So that's probably the only thing that I would change. But it sounds like you have a similar background if I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask another follow-up that I know, sorry, I'm hogging the mic a bit, but I think it's relevant to what our instructors have been sharing so far. So I think a lot of us would have this question is we hear like, not to put, this isn't explicitly what we've been told, but we do hear like theory isn't as important, for instance. I'm curious to hear from you, like what some of the benefits were for you that have held. How do you land on that conclusion that like, hey, actually having more of the academia part of music is actually really helpful to have?
Yeah, I mean, theory is an agreed language and thought process and how to deconstruct or construct musical ideas. I think without it, there's a language barrier. It's how you communicate versus how I communicate. Even if we have the same thoughts, we don't have an agreed system or language to get those ideas across the table. And so without theory, I can't say that you won't be successful, but I know it's going to be a tougher road, right? And I think for me, as a leader and as a person who is a curator and a constructor and a conductor and a father of teams, I can't afford to have language barriers, right? Because one, the client is relying on me to decode language to them in a way that they can understand, but then I also have to speak to people who are proficient across multiple disciplines, gospel musicians, classical musicians, technicians, people who learned on the fly, people who went to Full Sail University and they have the whole Dante, Matty, and binary understanding of sonic theory, and people who just kind of know, they have the instincts because they grew up in the space. So again, if I can't communicate or at least understand at a base level all of those languages fundamentally, I'm not able to lead the ship and the charge to the finish line.
Amazing. Thank you.
Certainly.
That's great. That's great. Let's hear from Tati. Let's keep it rolling.
Hi. So I was wondering because you guys were both saying how it's important to throw yourself into the space if you're not in it yet. So I was just wondering, I'm sure Steva, when you got started, a lot of it was word of mouth, just from networking and maybe your other career that you had and just making connections and meeting people. So I was wondering, um, how much of your I guess like early success you can attribute to word of mouth and networking and how that would translate today if you were to do it and like utilize social media for it and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I attribute 100% of my early success to word of mouth. There's no mechanism that helped me other than that. We didn't have a LinkedIn or a Glassdoor or an Indeed.com or social media. And so being social in real life was the fruit, the tree. And for me, what I learned at an early age is I wasn't willing to miss any opportunity to further my reputation. And so that meant that I wasn't willing to turn down any invite, right? And I had to make some sacrifices socially, some sacrifices in my personal life because I had goals. And I decided that those goals were more significant than my current social pull. And so for me, every concert, every kickback, every out back or IHOP outing after the concert with the people who invited me to the concert, that just was the job that I committed to, and that fostered relationships that turned into more jobs and more referrals and more good standing with more people and networking across as my peers started to elevate in their industries. Now, all of a sudden, I have a relationship with somebody who's in a position to make decisions, and we have a lot of history. And again, that just came from not missing an opportunity to network. I think I had one or two instances that made me commit to that theory. And it was something simple where I went with a buddy to an event and decided to leave early because nothing was happening. It was underwhelming. And I talked to him the next day and I said, "Hey man, how'd it go last night? I had to get out of there. It was boring me to death." And he said, "Man, as soon as you left, somebody showed up and gave me a job and it changed my life. So too bad for you." So I decided at that moment, I am never leaving any event early unless it's an emergency. I need to squeeze every drop of opportunity out of everything that I'm a part of. So hopefully that gives some context.
Thank you, Steve. And for like the second part of my question, if you were to start today,
Yeah.
would you approach social media the same way, or would you focus more on content creation? Because I feel like it's kind of it's tricky.
Yeah. I would stay away from content creation if your content isn't fully developed, right? I don't think people, at least in my position of being a hiring authority, I'm not necessarily interested in your journey, right? I want to see the finished product. Now, again, if you're in a peer group and your intent is to just kind of be fluid and, documenting and blogging kind of gives you, a certain amount of viewership and followers and supporters, maybe for artists that work because people like they tend to want to say, hey, I've been following Tati since she was doing, bedroom videos, and songs with the small, microphone in her closet. That story kind of makes people feel connected to your journey. But if you're in the vendor space, I don't know if I can say that that's the same thing. So I would probably put more focus and emphasis into being a master of your craft and then presenting a product once you feel like it's fully developed. But in parallel to that, I would be doing the social media, um, you know, social networking kind of thing. So DMs, comments, constant conversation starters being, I think the beautiful thing about social media that we didn't have growing up is that you get to start conversation with people who never agreed to be in communication with you, right? And so being constantly in those people's minds and ethoses, I think, starts a relationship that you can then turn into human form. Because once you meet them in person, right, even if you strategically find yourself in the same room, right, respectfully, then they might say, "Oh, are you Tati from?" Yeah, we've been, of course. You come hang with us. Hey guys, I just met this young lady on Instagram, but she's the funny. She sends me the best memes ever. So yeah, she's with us tonight. She's gonna sit at our table. So in my mind, I think it just depends on what side of the industry you want to land on. But I would definitely use social media with the same type of spirit and muscle that I attacked my physical social industry with back in the day,
Thank you. That was super useful. Thank you.
for sure.
Thanks for your question, Tati. Thank you, Stevo the producer. Let's hear from Thu.
Hi, Candace. Hi, Stevo.
What's up?
What's up? I just got to give you your flowers, man. I was at the Kanye concert, and it's just
Oh,
like
wow.
mind blowing to face you on Zoom and kind of see the visual person behind the masterpiece. So my questions are kind of directly towards that, but how much of it is Kanye's direction, percentage wise? How much is it your input? Um, I what who chose the guest artist, who made the decision to put him on night one versus night two.
Let's
Um,
talk about it. Let's talk about it,
yeah,
Thu.
like the
Give us the whole
budget
give
with
us
the
the whole
world,
skitty. We want to know what's going
right?
on with
We want
you,
the
okay? Let's
tea.
talk about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, great questions. One is just so incredible to know that you made it out to the show. So to get those questions directly from someone who's able to take it all in human form, it's just full circle. Uh, but yeah, at that scale, leadership is kind of architectural. Like you stop thinking in songs and you begin thinking in chunks, right? And in digestible, musical experiences, redundancy and like emotional pacing and information flow. That's kind of how I'm processing some of these songs because we're not doing full, you experience it. We're not doing a full 3 minute version of his song from album two, right? I need to take the bridge from album two and kind of merge it into the intro from song three from album 14 and then figure out, okay, let me bring two songs from album 14 because they all kind of speak in the same, language and ethos. But then I want to stop the show, have him say something to kind of break up the tension, and then we're going to go back to album three. So it's a GPS route to give you a full experience in 90 minutes or more, or should I say 90 minutes or less of everything that is the artist of Kanye. And so for me, that labor is divided um by department, but I'm usually at the head of the decision making process. Somebody like Kanye, we all know that he has mental considerations, right? And I think it's warranted based on just how God created him, but also based on everything he had to deal with throughout his life. And so giving him the additional weight and responsibility of making all of these decisions is probably not the best thing to do. Even though he's a producer mindset, we still want to treat him like an artist. We want him to focus on delivering the product to the client. And so I take on all the weight, right? There was 47 songs in the set list, and I made the decision with my partner, Andre Troutman, for every single song and why and where and how long and how short. Now, Kanye being himself, he did decide to um make some changes, right? Up until the very last minute, the very last second, I should say, we were um deliberating and deciding what should change. Even during the show, there were some audibles that were thrown, which is definitely, it separates the boys from the men for sure. But I guess it's just sonic and musical situation awareness. And the objective is never ego of ideas, right? It's more of a collaborative exercise and just making sure that ultimately the person who has to stand in front of the crowd and represent that music feels good about it.
Yes.
Amazing.
Thank you,
Thank
Sue, for
you.
your question. We're not done with it. So you mentioned a couple of things. For those of us who weren't there, first of all, Andre Troutman is the homie, so we're going to be doing a collab with him coming up soon. So super excited about that. But let's get back to it and talk about you two. How do you guys divvy up the responsibilities between both of you guys' superpowers when it comes to working that big of a show? And then I have another follow-up show two question because for those of us that wasn't there, how do you make decisions on what to elevate on night two versus what happened in night one? Like, what's that experience like? Because you have different artists that came out the second night as well. So let's talk about all of that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give a massive shout out to Andre because he's just a force. I mean, obviously, for those who don't know, he's coming from behind the legacy of Roger Troutman, who is of Zapp and Roger, who is of Computer Love, which honestly I think introduced the culture largely to Talkbox. And so Andre originally got the call to be Kanye's right hand person when it comes to the live show responsibilities, and he did a string of shows in Korea and a bunch of other countries. But I think no, it was Mexico. Mexico was, I think, the show that really gave Andre that front facing. Okay, we have to pay attention to this guy because it was the show was designed for Andre to be like a guest feature artist with Ye, which just catapulted his career and visibility to the sky. And so once we went to SoFi, which was probably the biggest, the most visible, right, the redemption moment, Andre decided to give me a call because, it was a lot of work. And so we decided to divvy up and, share the load. And I was just a happy co-captain to help him along that process. And it ended up being a shared labor of love. So I think our expertises are different and they complement each other because he is an artist in his own right, right? He is a talk box singer, performer, and he sees vision and he operates again in the same type of brain and DNA of a Ye. And we just discovered I'm more of a creative systems person, right? I'm a musician and I can play with the best of them, but I thrive in organizing and pulling pieces of chaos together and making a game plan and a structure and watching it and conducting and seeing it through the finish line. So it was a lot of that. It was uh, Andre taking Ye's vision and saying, "Okay, here's what we have," and me saying, "Okay, well let's do this to make it cohesive and get it across the finish line." And there was just a yin yang the entire time. What was your second question?
The second question was, because we weren't all there, there was some differences between night one and night two. Like, how
Yeah,
did you guys make informed decisions about, okay, night one, these are some of the hitches, these are some of the things we want to
yeah.
change over. Plus, guest artist was different night two as well. So, can you talk a little bit more about that experience?
The guest artist thing is generally happening on the management and the label side. They're deciding what's the best participant to kind of, um, add to the narrative that the label, whatever their marketing cycle, right, what they have in mind. That's usually a strategic decision. But when it comes to changes from night one to night two, it's really like sports, right? You have a game, whether it's good or bad, you watch tape, and as a team, you decide, hey, this is where we dropped the ball. You missed this block. You should have caught this ball. This touchdown it was a missed opportunity, and you rewrite the playbook, and then you come back night two stronger and better. And that's the same thing we do as a musical team. We all sit and we listen to the front of house mix, right? We go back and we make notes, we critique each other, we tell each other what we could have done better. And then we came in maybe I'd say several hours earlier than we did before. Actually, I think show the first show was Wednesday. I think the first show was Wednesday and it's the second show was Friday. So that Wednesday night. No, can't remember. But I know that the next day we did maybe a 12-hour day, right, of just having an empty stadium, right? 80,000 empty seats with about 75 subwoofers, right? And 47 songs of music. And we just went through every single song and we dialed in, and Andre was on one side of the stadium and I was on another side of the stadium in the dead spot. And we would talk over microphone comms and say, hey, how's it sound on your side? Hey, it's good, but we need to cut, 4 dB at this frequency because I'm not really feeling the bass over this side. And he would do it there. And I would say, hey, well, you messed it up on my side. We actually need to split the difference. And I'll go back to the front of the house. And we're in a stadium, so you can't just sprint over to another side. You got to go through the elevator, down the stairs, across the 50-yard line. So it was a lot of cross collaboration, moving parts, and again we crossed the finish line. It felt like a championship game that we
Love
came
it.
victorious
We
with.
love that.
Yeah, yeah.
We love that. That's amazing. Teamwork makes the dream work and sounds incredible. Casey, let's hear from Casey. Casey has a question for you. Casey is a big Yee fan, so let's hear you, Casey.
Hi, thank you for coming as a guest speaker. I work with Live Out Live and communications. I also was present for the Yay at SoFi day, the second day. I will give you your props. It was a beautiful execution, and it was probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to, like ever. I've seen Ye perform live multiple times, but I've never seen it at this sort of level. So definitely props. But my question is kind of to better understand too, working with someone like Ye who or any other artist. That's like a perfectionist or really does want to take creative control on certain aspects. How do you find that balance or that compromise? Because everyone has a bunch of ideas and, wants to, do a lot of things at the same time. But like, how do you, because I see a musical director, at least in my opinion, as kind of like the middleman, because you're having to communicate with a lot of people and try to, find that happy medium. So what's your process when it comes to that and, have a successful show like you guys did this past month?
Yeah, I'll take it back to performance IQ. It's just like any other career path. The more you do it, the more your expertise grows. And I am constantly taking suggestions from the client, but at some point, if I know it's not going to make the show successful ultimately, I do give them an amount of respectful pushback and counter suggestions because I've seen a lot, right? And that's the beauty of having several clients, like somebody like Ye or Rihanna or anybody. They have only for the most part, with the exceptions, considered manage their own career and their own visions, right? But from someone like myself, who this year alone, we've had 15 clients last year, maybe 22 in total, right? I'm able to see a lot more of the field. My field vision is wide. It's not necessarily siloed based on what a singular experience may look like. So for me, it's speaking confidently, intelligently, and having results to prove it is what I try to lean on when it comes to having conversations with clients. But again, that's something that had to develop over time. At this point in my career, I've done the Super Bowl, I've done stadiums, pretty consistently. I've worked with artists like Kanye and Rihanna and Lizzo and all the way to newer acts who are establishing themselves like Coco Jones and Money Long. And then I've done some acts who are on the latter half of their career, A. Marie and Keisha Cole. And so again, I have a wide spectrum of understanding of what type of decisions will yield certain types of results. And if I have a client who has a suggestion with results in mind, and the suggestion doesn't necessarily pair with the results, then it's my obligation to let them know what the proper suggestion is.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. Thank you for the question.
Great questions. You guys, listen, we are talking to one of the best in the business. When you talk about like doing what you do in the best of your game and doing it at the highest level, this is someone who is doing that. So let's definitely maximize the next 9 months we have. Aaliyah, you have some really great questions in the chat you want to ask Stevo the producer?
Yes, please. Back again. I couldn't resist. These answers are awesome. It's so great having you here. One part of this that's so cool for me is I think, like, at least speaking for myself, when there's an industry and you're, not really like fully on the inside yet, and there's all these unknown unknowns, and this is making this part of it unknown in some ways, which is better than it being an unknown unknown. By which I mean like I've gone to concerts, but I've never really thought about the orchestration of the production and how the sound comes through. And I bring that up because it's related to my question. A lot of us in this room, well, this is the production class. A lot of us are artists and musicians, especially in our early stages. And so, as an artist myself, right now I'm performing in actually intentionally like very small rooms. I'm trying to work on my exposure therapy. So think like cafe with like 30 to 50 people singing my original music, just, a mic and a guitar. I was curious if you could share, I never thought about not necessarily having a music director at this stage, and you probably wouldn't recommend it, I imagine. But are there certain things that you would recommend us artists think about before getting up there on stage to kind of um, like experiment or test out how the sounds might be received by the audience?
Yeah, I think that some kind of director should be a part of every single show that you have. A choreographer, a creative director once told me that um, artists who have shows where it's just a stool, right, and a microphone tend to think that they don't need any direction until they realize that they don't know how to sit on the stool, right? And what they meant by that is everything matters in artistry, right? It's body language, posture, mic placement, right? What you do when you want to pull your mic stand away and have an intimate moment with the audience, how to do that elegantly, how to make it translate and feel like this isn't the first time that you've done this, how to remove awkwardness, movement coaching, right? So I'm talking about choreography now and not creative direct or music direction. But my point to you is I think every single show that you do, you should have a consultant present who has more experience than you. And as your shows grow and change, you'll decide what discipline that consultant needs to come from. Like, hey, this is an acoustic show and it's a live band setting. I need a musical consultant. Hey, there's no musicians present. It's just me and an audience, but I need somebody that comes from the movement discipline. Hey, this is a DJ set, right? And the music is in the tracks, but there's a lot of lighting and a lot of flares, and it's really, aesthetically, focused. I need somebody that comes from that discipline to let me know, hey, how should this light fixture, whether it's hanging or floor fixtures, how should we communicate to this particular lighting director um, to make my show as competitive as possible? Do we want lasers? Do we want spotlights? When do we, I want the stage to go black. So I think my point to you is that I think it's less about musical direction and more about having some kind of direction based on the emphasis of the show, right? Which probably will change per opportunity. And if you can afford it, when you can afford it, then you bring in cut captains from every discipline.
Super helpful. Even more unknown unknowns becoming known. What would be some of the titles of these types of people that you would pull in the early stages? You mentioned like movement coaching, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just spit all the titles out that would ever come about, and then we'll maybe talk about when and how they fit. So at the top of the food chain is the creative director. Under their peer view is probably choreographer. Um, there's also um, lighting director and possibly video jockey. Those people generally report to a creative director. There's also uh, your production manager who sits alongside the creative director in the food chain, maybe one step below. And I'll tell you all of the teammates and leaders who report to the production manager, right? That's your front of house person. That's your monitor engineer. That is your playback engineer. That's your lighting designer and yeah, lighting director. That's your video jockey, and probably your camera operator. And the reason why they report to him from a technical perspective is because the production manager has all of the knowledge of wiring and cabling and dimensions, right? They're the technical director, so to speak. The creative director is just making sure that, hey, what we decide creatively is fully agreed and aligned, right? What lights, what colors, what video, what content, what um aesthetics, right? What are we trying to convey? What's the vision I had in my head? The technical director is saying, hey, all those colors are cool, but we only have three cables and we need to sacrifice a color because the fourth cable is going to cost us $1 million. So that's why those two heads kind of have to be in sync. Then you can say the musical director, obviously the band reports to him. Um, Also your monitor engineer and front of house engineer and playback engineer kind of report in pseudo to your musical director for sonic and sound direction and input. So they're taking technical direction from your production manager, right? As far as gear, but they're taking creative direction for audio from me because I'm the one that's saying, hey, this is too loud. This is not the way that I envisioned it. Let's turn this vocal down, this snare drum up. Let's get rid of that frequency because it's not translating in this venue. So I'll kind of maybe stop there because it can get really dense, but those are three department heads and several subordinates that kind of report in parallel to different department heads depending on the issue or the direction. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. This is super helpful. My mind is just blown at like how many factors there are. This is great.
Yeah, and that's maybe 10% of the entire team.
Wow.
Thank you, Aaliyah, for your question. Just a wealth of knowledge, you guys. So, one thing that I want to do is remind you that there's a feedback form in the chat. When you guys, before you log off, feel free to provide some feedback if you are enjoying these sessions and if you want us to continue to do these and bring amazing professionals and experts in their field like Stevo the producer to industry sessions in the future. We would love to hear your feedback. But in addition to that, since Stevo the producer had provided us with a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much more that we would love to learn from him. If you don't mind, Stevo, dropping where they can find you on IG or LinkedIn or wherever the best way for them to connect with you in the future in case they're seeking out more information or mentorship or guidance. And then we'll ask one more question before we log out because we're almost at time. And Angelica had one question. So if you don't mind dropping your information in the chat or letting us know where we can find you to connect in the future, that would be great.
Yeah, the information was posted in the chat at 3
Great.
6 p.m., but I'll reiterate it audibly so you guys can hear it. So the The best way, I think, for us to stay in contact and keep up with each other's journey is actually our website. So it's www.sevens.com. The way you spell that is number seven, Evens. So www.7evens.com. That keeps you up to speed on everything that we're doing. And that is where you would find opportunities for jobs to work with us on one of the tours or television shows or productions. We're currently hiring pretty urgently for an administrative assistant, a runner, and a musical director's assistant. So anybody that's interested in a position, please click the careers button on that website and please get in contact with us. When it comes to just social interaction, Instagram obviously is a great place. So if you go to IG and you type in Stevo the Producer, no spaces, STEVOTHE, producer, you will find me with a nice bright smile.
Amazing. Thank you. And so before we close out, Angelica, why don't you go ahead and ask Steve, the producer, your last question. We love to hear the last bit of key information from you, Steve, the producer, before we log out.
Yes. Hey, Steve. Hey, Candace. Real quick, you kind of answered it a little bit, but I was just wondering. I know you said you don't really go out on the road anymore or anything like that. So I just wanted to know, like, what method do you use to build your team? Like, are you finding people on social media? Is it word of mouth? Or like, how do you build your team that you send out?
That is a great question, and honestly, it's hard to find good help. I mean, any enterprise, any team that has been developed at the CEO or COO or hiring authority level, they'll tell you that it's a challenge. But at this stage, I build teams much more through um, pattern recognition, right, than discovery. I think social media, it can expose talent, but it rarely reveals professionalism, emotional regulation, adaptability, pressure tolerance, right? Those are the traits that sustain careers. And most of our placements come through proximity, right? And observation and trusted referrals. So I pay close attention to how people move in rooms before I ever evaluate their playing ability. That's honestly the biggest and strongest hurdle for us to cross because this is a relational industry, right? You can make or break your career and mine, right? If you make decisions that don't necessarily have the correct amount of social acumen baked into those decisions. And so for me, it's do you make environments better or heavier when you enter them, right? Can you take correction without ego? Technical skill is honestly the baseline now, but what separates people is like long-term communication, consistency, pressure awareness. I'm not just building bands anymore. I'm building ecosystems and social communities. So for me, partnering with universities has probably been my biggest um, ally and just step in the right direction because I'm dealing with vetted talent to a degree. I'm dealing with eagerness. I'm dealing with younger, hungry, aspiring individuals who already cross the threshold into being accepted into an institutional system, right? And they're used to applying rigor and used to meeting standards for a grade, right? As opposed to finding someone who might, have come across my timeline or something like that. And I just don't know. I don't have anything to size up, any metrics to assess, is this person ready for the space? And having several partnerships in these universities, like the one that I'm, in consultant, relationship with now, helps me to have individuals in those spaces who can speak to exactly what I need, right? So I'm able to call this chairman or this, career center at this institution and say, hey, can you provide somebody with these skills for this type of position? And they already know the heart and the mind of myself and the team that we're trying to build because we've already had community and rapport. So it's a very strategic and intentional decision because there's a lot on the line. So yeah, that's the short answer, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, no, makes sense. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your question, Angelica. And so, Steve, I want to just put on your radar that the young people in this class are eager. They had to apply for this opportunity to accumulate it. They are here at their own on their own merit and because they're eager to advance in the music industry. So if they hit you up, just know that they are also at that same standard and are prepared to jump into any opportunity that you might have for them. So I just want to advocate for them really quickly. And I want to thank you all for being here and staying a little extra time to hear from Stevo. Any last words for us, Stevo, before we log out? You guys show him some love and appreciation for being here and sharing that wealth of knowledge with us.
I'll give you two last words. One, if you have reliable transportation and you are in the Los Angeles ethos, please apply. Go to the website and click the careers button and send an email so that we can consider you for the opportunities that we're hiring for urgently right now. It's touring season, so we do need the help right away. And the second thing I would say is something that came across my mind today, and I think I would implore you guys to be overtly professional, right? I think that that is what really is a underrepresented skill set, right? Because ultimately, if you are courteous and thorough and rigorous and intentional and respectful and just all the tangible sets that we tend to just look over, those will save you when you make mistakes, right? Those will save you when you're not creating, right, your best work. Those will save you when you have writer's block, because at the end of the day, a lot of our creative counterparts don't necessarily come with those instincts baked in, but it just goes such a long way. I had a consultation today with a church that's really doing great things in the faith-based space. And before we even got to doing any business, they just said, "Man, we want to continue working with you just because you're one of the most professional creative vendors that we've ever encountered." And that alone just already puts you at the top of the candidate pool. And so if I could leave you with anything, I would say be overtly, obnoxiously professional and courteous. And that, I promise you, will run in parallel with your creative skill sets.
Thank you for those last words. I'm going to hand it over to Skylar with the Grammy Museum. Thank you so much, Skylar, for having us. And thank you, Stevo, for being here to share all the information today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Candice, for curating this. Stevo, the producer, amazing knowledge. It's definitely a privilege to be able to hear directly from you. To all the students, I second what Candice is saying, that they're making a choice to be here. Some are actually taking this class for credit as well too. So definitely excited to have you here, and maybe we figure out something at the Grammy Museum as well too. too. So we'll keep the communication going. But thank you for being here.
The answer is yes, yes, and yes. I will see you guys soon. Blessed
Yeah,
and productive. Thank you so much for your time.
Stevo, you're
absolutely.
based in LA?
I am based in LA.
Skylar, we definitely have to have him at the Grammy Museum in person,
Let's
ASAP.
do it. Let's do
All
it.
right.
Let's
Look
do
Please,
forward
it.
to seeing you.
All right.
All right.
see you
See
guys in the
y'all.
field. All right.
Bye.